Hey everybody, this is Curtis from PSNStores.com. Today we're taking a look at Furi. So this game is out today. It is on PlayStation Plus for PS4. So if you're a Plus member, you can go ahead and get it. I believe it's $25 if you're not a Plus member, and that seems a little high. But at any rate, so this is uh, basically a boss rush game. The entirety of the game is just you going 1v1 against a series of boss fights. So we're gonna start up a new game. Basically, the story here, we'll get to. So there are 3 difficulties. There's Fury. Once you beat the game, you unlock Furier, and then there's Promenade. If you play Promenade, you actually do not unlock trophies or unlock harder difficulty modes, or even the speedrun mode. So Fury is kind of where they recommend. So we'll start there. It is a very hard game, frustratingly so in certain circumstances. The farther you get, at least the farther I got, there was 2 to 3 fights kind of later in the game that got to be really frustrating in a lot of ways, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But the story here is basically you play as this guy. I don't think he's named at all, but you are locked up, and in order to escape, you must defeat the jailers. You must kill the jailers to eventually make your way out of this prison that you have found yourself in. And you would do so through the help of this mysterious guy. He's got this really creepy bunny hat, bunny hood, or something like this. I don't know. You'll see it in a few seconds. But we're gonna go and we'll do the first boss fight, and I'll try my best to explain the mechanics. It's the combat itself is pretty simple. There's not a lot of different controls to learn. That it's pretty basic, but they're able to get a lot of mileage out of the controls.
Pull yourself together. Get out of prison. Kill the jailer. Fight for your freedom.
So I think one of the strengths of this game is twofold. It's the fact that, as you'll see, the combat is just, it feels good. Like it is responsive. Again, there's not you've got some melee combat with your sword and some range with a gun, and you're not pulling off crazy combos you need to memorize. It's very basic, but the strength of it is just from its simplicity. You are able to do there's a lot of things you're able to do. It's a very defensive game in a lot of respects, where you're waiting for an opening that the boss is going to give you that you can punish them with, and it feels good. And kind of one of the other strengths is that as you progress, all of the bosses are pretty different. The strategies you need to take them down, they're all very, very different, which is also very good. So So in between boss fights, you have these sequences where you will walk through an area. You can't go any faster than this. So you can control it with the analog stick. But what they'll do is the camera will switch often, and the camera will be in all sorts of crazy different angles, and it's mostly just to make, the art in this game it's a very interesting looking game. I believe the guy behind Afro Samurai, the art in that, I guess, is the person who did this. So it looks really, really cool. But oftentimes, when the camera angle switches, the orientation for your analog stick, the way you're controlling the character, doesn't. So if I'm holding forward and the camera were to switch, he would still it. There are other games that have done it, but it's real weird. So the easiest way to handle it is just to hit X, and the character will just move forward on its own until you reach the boss area. And so in between bosses, those walking segments are used to basically give you a little bit of story development. Typically it talks about the next boss coming up. It'll be like, oh, this girl coming up, don't don't think she's as weak as she looks, or something like that, or it'll give you a little bit of a backstory of who they are, or where they came from, or if they have any relation to like why you're in prison here. So it'll give you a little bit of that. There's not a lot. I believe once you finish the game, you can just skip those segments. So here we go. So every boss is set up this way where it's 1v1. Top left is your health bar. You notice you have blocks on the bottom. Those are like different segments of your health bar. Or sort of. They're lives, basically. And then same for the boss. And so what those represent for the boss is phases. And so once I get this first health bar down, it's gonna trigger another segment here. That thing right there is health. So right analog stick I can use to shoot. Pretty simple enough. And so I've got him down. Now I can kind of come up. I'll charge my sword, and now we're in this weird like sort of like arena where I can't go past this blue line here. And so what you'll do is it'll give you this tell where there'll be this like flash of light and this sound effect, and that's how you know to parry, basically. And so you time it right, you do some parries. Every time you parry successfully, you will heal a little bit of your health. If you are able to parry at the last possible moment, it's a very, very small amount of timing on your window there. Time will slow down and you'll be able to punch them even more. You'll do even more damage. If I hold down R2, I can charge my shot. If you hit them with a charged shot, it'll knock them down. Do a bit more damage. So that's pretty useful. So we'll go ahead and go in. Trigger this segment again. So X is your melee attack. You can charge it up. So there's a few instances where you'll have that opportunity to do so. You've got to really know when to use it, because it's not always going to work. More often than not, the boss will actually block your attack. But as you're noticing, every time I'm getting this health bar down, it's triggering another section of the boss fight. This boss acts as more of a tutorial. He can be pretty tough. I did die to him once. But now that I finished the game, I can't imagine I'll have too much difficulty with him. So X is your dodge, so you can kind of dodge like this way. You can hold the X button down to dodge a little farther. You notice these projectiles. This game gets very bullet hell-ish in a lot of ways, especially towards the end. Or, well, with certain bosses. You'll notice some of those bullets are glowing in such a way... I screwed that up. That if I hit them, they'll drop some health items here, which is super useful against certain bosses. So as I said before, a lot of this game is playing very defensively. It is recognizing boss patterns. It's knowing when you can attack safely and when you should be just be standing there waiting to parry or waiting to dodge. There's actually a boss later on that is built entirely around the parry mechanic. And as I said, every boss feels different. They are all very... they have their own unique attack patterns. Unique arenas. They look different. The strategy you need to use to take them down is different. I wouldn't say they're all successful in being like really just fun bosses to fight. Again, like I said, there's a couple towards the end that just were super frustrating. Like I kind of got what they were going for. One of the not the last boss, but one of the ones kind of closer to the end. I think in concept is a really cool fight, but it was far more frustrating than it was fun. And that comes from the difficulty. So kind of the way, you're not going to see it in this video, but the way it plays out is if I were to, or let's show it here, I guess. So I've got him pretty far down, almost to the point where we would go getting close and do the kind of parry and attack and stuff like that. If I were to let him knock me down and take all my health away here, what that's going to do is that's going to take away one of my lives, one of the 3 that I'm given. And I believe you're given different depending on what difficulty mode you select. I think you get like 5 in Promenade. But what happens there is you'll see that he fully heals and I will fully heal. And then we will restart that section over again. If I were to lose all 3 of my lives, I would restart the entire boss battle. So where a lot of the frustration comes in, is it's a really hard game, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily unfairly hard. There's a couple things in some of the later bosses that I feel is kind of a bit much. It's a little bit much. Especially there's some bullet hell segments that are like, okay. Although I think that might depend on if you've played a lot of bullet hell games, maybe you'll have a bit of an advantage there, whereas I haven't. But what happens is, you know, these boss fights, they're not short. If you're really good and you've played this a lot, there's certainly bosses that you can take down very quick. But more often than not, if it's your first playthrough, you know, these are not going to be short bosses. And in some ways I like that. I think it kind of heightens just the amount of the tension that is there in these 1v1 duels where you know, it really feels like you are against an extremely formidable opponent. Like from the get-go, really. Like even the early bosses are very tough, but they can be hard. But it does get frustrating, like if you're on a particular boss that you've been stuck on, and you get that boss to his last segment, and you're about to kill him, and then you die, and you restart the entire fight over again. It's, you know, yeah, it's the type of thing that, you know, if you're prone to throwing a controller around, that be careful because there is a certain amount of frustration here. But I think that a lot of that can be alleviated by the fact that, again, just control-wise, it is a very responsive game. And when you, even if you're stuck on a fight, when you finally take that boss down, it feels really good. Especially, I don't, you know, I still don't have the timing down exactly, but when you get those perfect parries, oh man, it's pretty good. But like I said, you know, there's not any crazy like sword combos or anything. It is very much just kind of waiting for your moment to strike.
You're gonna take some putting back together when I'm done with you.
One of the other things, so the bosses will talk to you. They will, if they knock you down, they will taunt you. As you progress in the fight, they will continue saying different things, and there's not like any major story revelations or anything. It's very much just a back and forth of like, you know, whether they're taunting you or just saying things of like, oh, you'll never take me down, or, you know, various things like that. And again, it just creates for these really interesting fights. Some of the taunts can get a little annoying if you're stuck on a particular boss fight, because they will just say the same thing over and over again. And so at some point it's like, alright, whatever, just let me let me keep going. But other than that, the in-between sections are interesting. I kind of get what they were going for, because there's definitely this level of like just letting you cool down after a really tense boss fight, and so I get that. I think they go on a little too long. Like this first one was super short, but some of them are a little lengthy. So they could have been a bit shorter. In those sections, you'll notice quite a bit of screen tearing. So if that bothers you, there's quite a bit that I notice, and I typically don't pay much attention to that. There is actually one boss fight in particular later on that I notice a lot of screen tearing in. And that's not something that usually bothers me. But I noticed it a lot. It didn't take anything away from it, but it is there for sure. So but like visually, it's just it's a really interesting looking game. Like there's a lot of, you know, I mean, you're just fighting a series of bosses over and over again, but the boss arenas and the environments in between each arena all look pretty different. In some ways, it reminds me a little bit of like El Shaddai. They're both they both look pretty different from each other, but there's definitely a few sections of El Shaddai that stuck out to me that this game reminds me of quite a bit. So I think what I might do is I'll briefly show this first boss on Furier mode. So I'll be upfront. I don't think I'd be able to beat this game on Furier difficulty. There's a couple bosses towards the end I just don't think I'd be able to do. Like I said, it is a very hard game. But from what I can tell, I did do the first boss on Furier mode, and from what I could tell, it does seem like there's actually quite a bit that they change up. Seems like there's some new attacks that they're adding for each phase of the boss to make it quite a bit more difficult. If you play it on Promenade, they take away sections. It becomes too much of a cakewalk. And so I think that's another... I've certainly seen other people share the same sentiment, like on Twitter, other reviewers. There were definitely segments where it's like, you know, even just on Fury mode, this particular boss feels like too much, but then on Promenade, it feels like a cakewalk, and so like I wish there was maybe a little bit more of a balance there, but overall, it's not too bad. And I think, you know, as frustrating as some of the later bosses can be, it's worth it to stick it out. I think, because if you knock the difficulty down, then you're just gonna like you're not gonna feel that great taking the boss down. But if you stick with it, only one boss in particular. I was only ever stuck on one particular boss for like a really long amount of time. More often than not, I was able to take most of them down with enough retries. But so here we go, Furier difficulty. You should notice, I mean, he's a bit more aggressive overall. I think some of the more projectile-based attacks, there's a lot more stuff going on. I think he does there's more stuff I need to parry. So there's a little bit more there, as you see. It's just, I think it's just more for this particular boss, but I can imagine that some of the later bosses have a lot more stuff going on with them. That sequence right there is stuff like that for, I believe, every boss. I know I saw it for most of them, where you have these QTE events where basically, I guess you just shake the analog sticks. And if you don't do it enough, if you don't shake them enough, I don't know, you can take a good deal of damage. But if you do, sometimes you're able to knock them back, or sometimes you can even do damage to them as well. I think it just depends on the boss fight. There we go. And yeah, getting those perfect parries also just, it feels good. It gives you that cool little like sequence there. And then you're back in. So I know I beat him on Furier last night. He was pretty tough. Maybe a little different talking and not like completely concentrating on it. And then of course there is a speedrun mode. And speedrun mode, there's no save, so the game like auto saves between boss fights. to keep your progression. There's no saving in speedrun. You're doing it in all one go. So I could definitely see this being something where people just get really, really good at it. This is probably something you could finish in under an hour if you were that good. But I would imagine that would take a lot of practice. Because there was at least 1 or 2 bosses that took me as much of an hour, if not more, to actually take down. And then you were also graded on your performance, so that is all dependent on the number of times you die. I think like how much damage you number of times you die, the amount of time it took you. I think there's something else. It's like 3 factors that factor into it. Now, we might not even get this guy past the first phase. One thing that threw me off a lot, there are some bosses that when they're attacking like that and you have this like just kind of series of parries you need to pull off, sometimes they'll do like 2 or 3 very, very quick. And then like the 4th one will be slightly delayed. That is the worst. It sucks because it's so hard to kind of like get into that mindset of like wait just a little, like a tiny bit longer for that 4th parry. And like there's a couple of bosses that will do things like that. Let's at least get him down to the next phase. See, I mean, I can't speak for every boss on Furi or mode, but I imagine there'll be... It at least seems like most attacks are changed up a little bit, and then there was definitely last night when I fought and beat him, there was a couple new attacks that I saw. That's actually new, I guess, for this particular boss. There we go. Just keep that up. Alright. Oh, so I guess one of the other mechanics I should explain, with how your lives work, is you notice I've already... Well, I lost 2, I guess. But anytime that you actually get past a certain phase of a boss, you regain a life. So even if you like... If you're on a boss fight and right off the bat you lose your first 2 lives, and you've only got 1 left, keep going, because if you're able to get past the next phase, you'll gain one of those lives back. So even if you're down to 1 life, you could potentially regain your other 2 lives. It's just there's a little bit more on the line, and in a game where there's already not a lot of leeway for mistakes, you've got to be even better. You know, you've got. But I do like that. That is an like a lot of stuff about this game that I think is really interesting and works pretty well. It's just, I think the farther I got, the more and more frustrated I became with certain bosses, and so that took a little bit of the enjoyment of the game like away from me, which sucked. Because there's actually we won't show it in this video, but the second boss is really, really cool. I just really, really liked the second boss fight a lot. So there's a little bit of conflicting feelings, mostly just with how frustrating it can get, but overall, like, especially because it's on Plus, like, really solid Plus game, for sure. Probably one of the better ones we've gotten, I think, in a while. Especially as far as like on like day of release, we're getting it. At $25, I don't know. I think I'd have a harder time recommending it at 25. Personally, I don't always like to factor in price into that kind of stuff, but it seems a little much. But that said, that is Furi.
The jailer is the key.
So I got a D rank in story in my first playthrough. Not very good. And that's what happens when it's your first time, I guess. But yeah, so speedrun mode, there's a practice mode, which I'm not going to click on because you can just go into any boss and immediately practice them, which I do appreciate quite a bit. Get some rankings and different stuff like that. So that is Furi. Again, it is out today. It is available on PlayStation Plus. If you are a Plus member, you can download that. I don't believe it's on the store just yet. I guess depending on when you're watching this video, but it should be up sometime today. Definitely recommend checking it out at the very least. If this looks like it's something that's kind of up your alley. Again, just super cool game. But at the same, well, I don't know. Like, I like it, but at the same time, there are things about it. The further I got in, the more I was like, I'm starting to not like this as much. And mostly that was stemming from just how frustrating some of the bosses became, which is, you know, always sucks for that to happen. But at the same time, this game needs to be difficult because it needs to have that really fulfilling accomplishment that you can get from finally taking out a boss that has been killing you over and over again. So once again, that's Furi. I am Curtis from PSNStores. Thank you as always for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later. If you like this or any of our other YouTube videos, subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to support what we do in general, be sure to hop on over to patreon.com/PSNstores. Your patronage helps keep our podcast 100% ad-free. Thanks for watching.